at some point, I would like to see Mike not like search on a broad scale, but like bring it back in and say, okay, this is my core. This is who we're going to go to battle with, and then kind of play it from there. Because I feel like a lot of this is like unfamiliarity between the starting unit and second unit, or the first, second, and third unit. I just think that it feels like this group hasn't been together very long, and they haven't, but it really does feel that way right now.
James, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, they need to tighten up that core. Who do you think is in that core though? Because I said I looked at the starters from last year. That's or last night. That's five. You got Davion, you got Monk, you got TD. I said Rashawn Holmes. A lot of people were like, "Oh no, if Rashawn Holmes needs to be in there." They wanted to put Alex Lynn in there, but right now, I think he probably has seven guys he could rely on, and I'm taking Davion out of the guys that you can rely on because he's not. I guess he's okay. He's 7.5. Mike Brown used a half. Right now, it feels like Davion is a half. But who would you have in that core of nine guys or so?
Yeah, it's really difficult. To be honest with you, I don't know what the answer is to that. And I think that's what he's looking at as well. Rashawn Holmes, specifically defensively, has not played well. And that's become an issue. I mean, watching some of the clips that you're seeing online, watching back some of the game last night, just it feels like not grasping concepts as opposed to like not playing hard. And that seems really strange. You've been in the NBA for a long time. It's not like they're trying to reinvent the wheel with their pick and roll coverage. But how often do we see, like, it's just out of sync? No one is playing together with that second unit, specifically on the defensive end. And then on the offensive end, I think we're seeing a lot of guys just pressing. Like Davion Mitchell's pressing. And I'll point to this too. Like, I don't want to call out a young guy and say, point fingers, because what's happening here isn't Davion Mitchell's fault. They've pulled the ball out of his hands and put it in Monk's hands for a lot of the time, or Monk's just taken it because that's kind of the way it's gone. But anytime you see a player look over and he's about to come out of the game and they rush a shot and hoist something up, that to me is always like a sign that, like, okay, conversations need to be had, because that's what we started seeing last night. Mitchell was going to come out of the game, and all of a sudden, boom, he's hoisting up a quick shot before he goes out of the game. And that just, it doesn't feel right and it doesn't look right. And at the same time, he's a young player who it feels like instead of just doing what he does and play defense really well, he feels like he's got to score in order for this thing to work, for him to get more minutes. And I just don't think that's the case. He needs to play defense, and he hasn't been horrible defensively, but he's fouled a lot. And I feel like most of his offensive stuff, it feels like you got, eight guys that are doing the same thing, and then one guy who's dribbling a bunch and trying to make things happen for himself, and it just feels forced. And again, I don't like that whole second unit. It feels like no one knows what their role is, and that doesn't make a lot of sense because those guys have been playing together a lot at practice.
I don't know if you recognize this as he was answering it, but we played the video of you talking to Mike Brown earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Brown, we think, answered your question about tightening up the rotation three different ways before finally saying, yeah, I'm going to tighten it up. Because he talked about, for some reason, playing LeBron 45 minutes and then he, and they say, can't do that here. And we think we know what he was talking about, but he ended your conversation with, yeah, I think we're going to tighten up the rotation. So is that how you took it? Like the rotation is going to be smaller on tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised it wasn't yesterday. I mean, if I'm a coach,
Yeah, that's
like,
what I thought when he said he was going to experiment. That's what we absolutely thought he was tightening up the rotation.
yeah, and like when you're an NBA coach, like I've been, again, this is my ninth NBA head coach. Like I like all of them have,
One more, I think you get a free one.
yeah, their differences. I think I do get one for free after this. Yeah, my card is full.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the punch card is full.
Yep.
Yeah, when things start to scramble like this and things start to go sideways, and you guys are right. Like, this schedule has been very tough. Portland is a lot better than people thought. They probably won't look that way in 2 weeks with Dame out. But still, they're a much better team than people thought they would be. The Clippers are extremely tough. The Warriors are the champs. Memphis is like a 2 or a 3 seed. I mean, Memphis is really good. And so I'm gonna say, like, what's best case scenario here? 1-3, like, that's realistically what you should have expected. Maybe not because it's at home, but still, I mean, even a 2-2 record would have been like a really big stretch. Just looking at the games in front of you. But normally, when a coach has this moment where things go south, they usually pare things down to the basics and say, okay, we're gonna go with 8 men, and we're gonna try to become a well-oiled machine for a game or two, and then we'll start peppering in additional guys. And of course, things happen. Guys get foul trouble, all that stuff. But the Kings had 3 days off before this game to prepare, and then they had the day off afterwards. So if you got to run like 5 guys out there for 40 minutes, like what he talked about with LeBron, that's okay. The players understand that, and they're fine with it. They're ready to go.
Mhm.
I just feel like we got a little too creative,
Mhm.
and that's not to say that I thought maybe I'm getting some grief from this online because I'm a UC Davis guy, but I thought Shima Moneki, he did some crazy things that were totally impactful on the court in the very little limited time he was out there. These little tiny deflections, he's stepping up and taking one on the chin from Steven Adams. Like, I thought he was active. I don't think he got in the way. And so I thought that there were some good things, but at the same time, like, you don't have time to experiment when you're 0-3 going 0-4.
Yeah.
And so I do expect Mike to, like, just get somewhat back to some familiarity. And the other thing, coming out of the post game last night, he said it like 3 or 4 times that they just shot right over the top of their guards out on the perimeter, that they thought that they did a really good job for 20 or 21 seconds, the shot clock, and then Desmond Bain just rose up and shot over him. And the thing that stuck out to me is, okay, where you played 12 guys in the first half, where was KZ Okpala? Like, you talk about a guy you don't rise up and shoot over the top of. He's 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan, and hasn't allowed that to happen. So while he has some offensive deficiencies, if you're putting him in the right position, that's a guy that I thought would have made sense. Again, we've talked to Casey about this. Like, who do you prefer? Do you prefer to play like a small guy in the perimeter? Or do you prefer like a bigger guy? He goes, oh no, I prefer the bigger guys. Well, Brandon Clark ran roughshod over those guys. Like, he beat them up, and they were searching for answers when it kind of felt like the answer was sitting there, and that you believed in that answer for the first 2 games of the season, 3 games of the season when you started the guy, and now you've gone away from him. And so, I think as opposed to experimenting completely, you could have stayed within sort of guys that had become familiar with each other, and I think that would have helped.
That's a great point, James. Because now I was going to go there. I was just going to ask the question. And these are the things that I'm not saying that's what the Kings are doing, but these are the things that kind of makes players look at coaches a little funny, where you have a guy in KZ Okpala for the entire preseason. In the first 2 games, he's your starter. And then you take him out of the starting lineup and he can't even get in the game. It's something like that where it's like, well, okay, well, what are we doing? And looking at the coach and the coaching staff and thinking, do you know what you're doing? Like, do you have an idea of what you're doing? Because that doesn't make it, and especially in a game where you play 12 guys and he doesn't play. How does he go from starting to he can't get in the game at all? And basketball wise, I agree with you. That's somebody that I would have put Desmond Bain on. He put Moneki on him a couple of times. And, Bain was just feeling it. He hit some big shots. Moneki was right there and he hit some big shots. But if you're looking for a guy to come in and try to slow him down or give him a different look, the fact that the guy that was starting for you for the last, combining preseason and regular season, for the last 3 weeks can't even get in the game anymore, and he didn't do anything wrong. Those are the things that you look at and you say, okay, well, this could be something where the players are like, yo, what's this guy doing right here?
Yeah, I don't see that at all. I mean, I do still believe that they're all in on Mike Brown, that they have bought in 100%. And I told you guys this in the beginning. This is something that many NBA coaches believe. You never start your best 5 players, which he didn't do for the first 3 games of the season, because Keegan Murray's one of your best 5 players without any question.
Mm.
But when you make the switch, a lot of times they'll skip over that guy. But in this situation, you're looking at a young guy who's going to play 35 minutes a game, and he's sliding into that starting role. And now it's like, who's going to be that next guy? And it really does come to trying to balance out that second unit. Because if you're having trouble scoring, well, like KZ Okpala is not the answer. And so I get that. So it didn't surprise me that KZ didn't play. It did surprise me that, again, Chimezi Metu had a good moment in the game against Golden State, where he was on the floor when they made a huge run and got back in the game. Well, I didn't accept that at face value. Like, to me, that game wasn't close at all. And even though the final score, they got within a couple of points, it just felt like that they were kind of like, the Warriors just put it in neutral, and maybe we're toying with the Kings a little bit, or just kind of like shut off after the first half when they dropped 89 points. They just kind of were messing around a little bit. And so while I think Metu had a good moment there and he played well, I also wouldn't have taken that as like, I gotta switch things up now. You played a really good team, so I think there is this issue that if you're going to say that the excuse is you played a really tough schedule, well, then you can't really look at things that are going wrong and overanalyze them. You played a tough schedule. It's okay to say that. But what you can't do is just keep tinkering and tinkering and tinkering, because then you forget what was working and you forget the basics, and you get away with what realistically could have been the plan or was a plan coming into the season. And here we are 4 days later, and we already got guys out of the rotation and kind of weird. So, I don't want to blame Mike Brown here. And I just think that, he's looking for a boost. And guys like Chima Moneke, they've had really strong camps, and they've brought excitement, and they've changed sort of the attitude of the team at certain moments. And so there's nothing wrong with giving them a shot. But I would try to get the first win first and then go from there. Like, get that win under your belt.